Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in Freshman English. We are in the MyPerspectives Volume Unit 5. We are in the Journeys of Transformation unit. We've studied our Odyssey. We've taken a look at any number of supplemental and enhancement readings, and we now turn to the last of those. I'm with you on page 669 and following. We're going to look at the Great Basho, and we're going to look at From the Narrow Road of the Interior. Let's just start, first of all, by introducing ourselves. And guys, if there's anything I'm hoping that our study here in the MyPerspectives volume is doing, among all the other things that I hope that we're doing, it is that I hope we're introducing you to great writers and thinkers, and then you'll be motivated to go ahead and find more about these writers and to read more of them. I'm certainly hopeful that this will be the case with Basho, one of the greatest poets the world's ever known. Widely regarded as the 17th century master of haiku, Basho dates 1644 to 1694, became interested in literature as a child and soon began writing poems in collaboration with others. After losing his home to a fire, Basho walked over 1,200 miles for more than 5 months. That is to say, he took an odyssey, didn't he? And described his travels in some of his best-known poems, including Travelogue of Weather-Beaten Bones. Now, the background for this little excerpt is, this is from Basho's famous Haibun, a classical Japanese form of literature that combines elements of prose with haiku. And some of you, in fact, are going to look at what we're about to read, and you're going to say, is it a poem or is it, in fact, just a paragraph? We're going to call it prose poetry of a kind. Haiku are unrhymed verses arranged into 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables. The haiku poet often uses a striking image from nature to convey a strong emotion. Well, let's turn now to 675, and let's just enjoy the reading of this, okay? And as we read, obviously, we'll annotate to some degree, okay? The sun and the moon are eternal voyagers. The years that come and go are travelers too. For those whose lives float away on boats, for those who greet old age with hands clasping the lead ropes of horses, travel is life. Travel is home. And many are the men of old who have perished as they journeyed. I myself fell prey to wanderlust some years ago, desiring nothing better than to be a vagrant cloud scudding before the wind. Only last autumn, after having drifted along the seashore for a time, had I swept away the old cobwebs from my dilapidated riverside hermitage. But the year ended before I knew it, and I found myself looking at hazy spring skies and thinking of crossing Shikara Barrier. Bewitched by the god of restlessness, I lost my peace of mind. Summoned by the spirits of the road, I felt unable to settle down to anything. By the time I had mended my torn trousers, put a new cord on my hat, and cauterized my legs with moxa, I was thinking only of the moon at Machumiya. I turned over my dwelling to others, moved to a house belonging to Sanpur, and affixed the initial page of a linked verse sequence to one of the pillars of my cottage. And then finally, to finish with the haiku, even my grass-thatched hut will have new occupants now, a display of dolls. Well, let's annotate really quickly this really magical work, and Helen Craig McCullough is doing our translating here, and she's done just an amazing job of trying to capture the rhythms and the nuances out of the Japanese. The sun and the moon are eternal voyagers. Now we're back to this notion of the cyclical and the ways in which our lives are lived in these circles all the time, being reminded of the power of that. The years that come and go are travelers too. And of course, as we've said many times, to recognize that we've lived some 15 years, and as we move towards the end of our 2nd decade, how in heaven's name could it have happened so fast? How did it happen so slow, right? That cyclical thing. For those whose lives float away on boats, for those who greet old age with hands clasping the lead ropes of horses, travel is life. travel is home. So note the paradox here, right? When poets love these paradoxes, the paradox, life is both travel as well as being home. You have the journey, you have the destination, you have the Odyssey, you have the Ithaca, right? To now tie this at 3a back to some of our study of the Odyssey. And many are the men of old, and we would say women of old as well, who have perished as they journeyed. No question. Elpenor comes to mind from our study of the Odyssey, but that's the risk one takes when one goes on the journey. One may not make it back entirely. Now to the second stanza. I myself fell prey to wanderlust some years ago. It's almost as if the first stanza here is going to provide us with a philosophic idea that all of life is about a journey. Then the second is his musings on how it happened for him. Desiring nothing better than to be a vagrant cloud scudding before the wind. This will remind us later when we study the love song of G. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. There it's a crab. Here it's a cloud. Notice it's a vagrant cloud, right? It's a wind. It's a cloud. Only last autumn, having drifted along the seashore for a time, whether he's speaking literally or metaphorically is what's beautiful about Basho's poetry, right? Only last autumn, having drifted along the seashore for a time, had I swept away the old cobwebs from my dilapidated riverside hermitage. Now, again, it's wonderful to imagine that what we're reading here is in fact metaphor. That is to say, it's funny, isn't it? How we kind of go along, and then all of a sudden, bam, we have that what Joyce called an epiphany. We kind of wake up and we go, wow, where have I been for so long? I need to go on a trip. It might be an intellectual journey as much as a physical journey, right? The year ended before I knew it, and I found myself looking at hazy spring skies and thinking of crossing the barrier here, the ancient gate between the northern and the southern regions of Honshu, the largest island of Japan. Bewitched by the god of restlessness. Let's circle that idea in our notes, in our text. And let's reference to the side at 3a how much that's Odysseus, this notion of being bewitched by the god of restlessness. As we said about Odysseus in earlier lectures, again on learnstrong.net, we pointed out that Odysseus has his choice to stay on the island of Calypso, to the beautiful Calypso, drop-dead gorgeous goddess, and to be forever young. And he says, I can't do it. I got to get home. I want to see Penelope, even though she's aging. I always got to keep going. That restlessness, that will be later in your senior year when we study the great Alfred Lord Tennyson in his poem Ulysses, which is another rendering of the Odyssean myth. He will say, I cannot rest from travels. I will drink life to the lees. In other words, I'm going to live life to the fullest. And here we're playing the same game with this notion of restlessness. I lost my peace of mind. And then he finishes by arguing, summoned by the spirits of the road. When your juniors will study Walt Whitman's great poem, Song of the Open Road, afoot and light-hearted, I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me, leading wherever I choose. He finishes the poem with some of those famous lines about it's provided in the essence of things that no matter from what success shall come forth, something that demands a greater struggle, and that idea that there's always the next journey on the open road. So we'll finish here with this notion that he had to go on a journey, and upon returning, of course, everything's a little bit different, right? Everything has changed. Even my grass-thatched hut will have new occupants now, a display of dolls, as all of life is about this, what the great American philosopher Ken Wilber calls transcending and including. We're always moving, we're always going forward. It's my hope that your study here with Basho will lead you to more of his classic poetry. Thank you.